Last time, I covered the various mistakes Jordan Peterson made during his debate with 20 atheists. In this commentary, I'm going to talk about why I don't like the people who hosted the debate, Jubilee, specifically in the form of their series, Surrounded. It is well known at this point the video was originally called One Christian versus 20 Atheists before later having its title changed to Jordan Peterson versus 20 Atheists. Because there are moments in the video where Jordan Peterson directly denies he's a Christian, such as, for example, in the very first clip of him shown if you click on the video. Seriously, here's how it opens.
You're a Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
Don't be a smartass.
Either you're a Christian or you're not. Which one is it?
You're really quite something, you are.
Aren't I? But you're really quite nothing. Right, you're not a Christian.
Okay, I'm done with him.
Here's the interaction as it appears in the actual conversation, by the way.
Are you
just
familiar?
didn't understand it.
Are you familiar with the Immaculate Conception?
Why is that relevant?
Because you go to a Catholic church, don't you? Or you've attended recently. You're interested in Catholicism, aren't you?
Just to correct this real quick, Jordan Peterson does not go to a Catholic church to my knowledge. Jordan Peterson's wife has become Catholic, however, he has repeatedly said that he himself is very unlikely to become one in the future.
What is stopping you from embracing the faith of your wife?
You mean all those pesky Catholics? I don't know if anything is stopping me.
What's holding you back?
I don't think anything's holding me back. Everybody's got their own destiny. And so...
Is it in yours?
Is it in mine? I would say it's unlikely. Sure.
All right. Are you familiar with their doctrines?
Somewhat.
Okay, you're
Their
familiar.
doctrines are very
How do they
deep.
regard Mary?
Why are you asking me that?
Because you're a Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
I don't know.
You don't know where you are right now.
Don't be a smartass.
Well,
and I mean
either
it,
you're a
'cause
Christian
I won't
or you're
talk to
not.
you if you're a smartass.
Oh, either you're a Christian or you're not. Which one is it?
I could be either of them, but I don't have to tell you.
You don't have to tell me. I was under the impression
private.
I was invited to talk to a Christian. Am I not talking to a Christian?
No, you were invited to.
I think everyone should look at the title of the YouTube channel. You're probably in the wrong YouTube video.
You're really quite something, you are.
Aren't I? But you're really quite nothing. Right? You're not a Christian.
Okay, I'm done with him.
As I covered extensively in the last part, Jordan Peterson's view seems to be more that religion, specifically in his case Christianity, is a good method for delivering metaphorical truths about life and has a variety of sociological benefits that mean we as a civilization should always at least keep it as part of our traditions. Now, that's an opinion he's allowed to have. I won't stop him from holding it. However, that is not the same thing as believing that 2,000 years ago a guy named Jesus lived and then died on the cross for all of humanity's sins. I wish to be clear that when I'm saying Peterson is not a Christian, I don't mean that he doesn't follow this specific commandment present in the Bible, or that he doesn't have the same political views I personally think Jesus would hold if he was alive today. I mean literally, if you look at the dictionary definition of what it means to be a Christian, you will find that he does not qualify. So why was this proposed in the first place? And by the way, one person out of these 20 specifically says he's not an atheist as well.
Okay, well,
right?
so here's my
I
position.
said that God, among other things...
I'm actually a non-theist. I'm not an atheist. I believe the human condition is one of uncertainty. And what that means is that I don't believe that you can conclude there is a God with certainty, and I don't believe that you can conclude that there is a God without in the same position.
So what we have is a debate between somebody who isn't a Christian and 20 people, most of whom are presumably atheists, in a video originally called One Christian versus 20 Atheists. However, that doesn't even get into one of my bigger problems with not just this, but the Surrounded series as a whole. So the basic concept is that one person is debating with a lot of people who disagree with their position. Okay, who are these other people, and why should I care what they think exactly? I don't mean that in some sort of elitist, you need to have a really high IQ to debate Dr. Peterson sort of way, but more, who are you people? Why exactly are these 20 people the representatives of atheism? Was there a meeting held among atheists where these guys were elected as delegates to the Jubilee Surrounded episode? That question is something I perpetually find myself asking the more I dig into this series. You guys know Council of Trent, that Catholic YouTuber I've covered a couple of times? Well, he actually applied to be on the episode with Alex O'Connor. Here's him discussing that.
And on an interesting side note, I applied to be one of the Christians for this episode back when it was announced as a roundtable with an unnamed atheist. To get on the show, you had to send an audition tape. So I included a recent endorsement of my ability to have productive dialogue from none other than Alex O'Connor. Here's part of what I sent them.
To set the stage, you've debated Ben Shapiro, Jordan Peterson, Piers Morgan, Sam Harris, Destiny, professors, bishops. How did their debate styles vary, and who is your most formidable opponent?
The most formidable? The guy that I just mentioned, Trent Horn, I debated him years ago, and I remember at the time thinking like, wow, that was powerful. Because at the time I'd been debating a lot of people, there was a lot of like shouting and putting down and this kind of thing. And Trent came in very calmly and put forward what are very good sort of arguments for the existence of God, very powerful, very difficult to respond to. And he did it calmly and politely, but effectively. And I remember coming away from that thinking like, wow.
Now, I disagree with the vast majority of things I've heard Trent say in regards to theology. Obviously, he is a Catholic apologist, I'm an atheist. We aren't going to see eye to eye on a whole lot. However, I can at the very least tell he's an informed person. He has a lot of knowledge regarding theological concepts that would produce, at the very least, an interesting conversation. However, maybe Trent just isn't representative of mainstream Christianity for some reason. Okay, fine. But if that's the case, why was Jacob Hansen allowed to be a member of the people that Alex was going to debate, given Hansen is a Mormon apologist? And many Christians don't view Mormons as fellow members of the same religion. And now this is even getting into the fact that Hansen says something that is very unrepresentative of Christianity as a whole, that Mormonism is superior to it. For those who don't know, at the very end of these videos, the one person gets to pick somebody from the group of people they are surrounded by and have a debate about a claim of their choice. Alex chose Jacob, and this was Jacob's claim.
My claim, which might bother some people in this circle, and this is why I thought maybe we could find a little bit of middle ground here. Like it. Because I represent a form of Christianity that a lot of people don't even consider as Christian. I'm a Latter-day Saint, also known as a Mormon.
Awesome.
And my claim is that the restored gospel, also known as Mormonism, provides a conception of God that is more rationally defensible than any other creedal Christian sect.
Look, I'm not saying O'Connor or atheists in general shouldn't debate Mormons. Mormons hold a worldview that I believe is incorrect, so, as such, I view it as completely appropriate to criticize them. However, as Jacob himself notes, many don't even consider Mormonism Christianity, so seeing him defend Mormonism in a debate on Christianity is not what people watch videos like this in hopes of seeing. I also want to point out that Jacob's proposition is too relative to really mean anything. You can agree with it and still be an atheist, on the condition you also don't see Mormonism as rationally defensible. At most, you just see it as less rationally indefensible than other forms of Christianity, assuming you consider Mormonism as one. A similar issue exists with their episode 20 Protesters versus 1 Palestinian. Again, they just apparently found the one person who completely represents all Palestinians according to them, I assume. By the way, Bad Empanada talked about the person that was invited on in his video on what he dubbed the token Palestinian industry. So I'm going to recommend you guys watch that if you want more information. However, I just want to stress that even if you do personally agree with what this person says, he is not a representative of Palestinians as a whole, because nobody is. I am just going to be blunt. I could go through every episode of Surrounded if I so wanted and find some claim which didn't make any sense to argue, or some problem with the format that inherently made the entire video worse. And I'm not saying that's a perpetual problem with the series that's seen in every single frame of it, but it is certainly a very consistent one. Commonly, I'm not even sure people on this show understand who they're debating. Sam Seder will say something like,
"My next claim is, unless you're a billionaire, a religious fundamentalist, or a xenophobic nationalist, voting for Trump was a mistake."
And then have no idea how to respond when somebody says they fit the description Seder mentioned.
So I actually think that this liberal world order needs to be thrown away completely, and I think Christian nationalism would be a good alternative.
Maybe we shouldn't allow women to choose to divorce unless their husbands say it's okay.
I mean, I don't really believe in divorce in general, so, sure. And same with xenophobic what's the problem with xenophobic nationalism? Don't you think that's better for Americans in general?
Xenophobic nationalism is better?
We should have a coherent culture. Everyone should be a part of the same culture. We should have assimilation.
Do you get to choose what the culture is?
We already have a dominant culture.
What is
based
the dominant
on
culture?
European and Christian values and identity. That is the dominant culture.
White Christian,
it's rooted in European identity.
So your argument is that
has been the dominant culture.
Just to be clear.
And we're not letting people assimilate to that. We're saying you should keep your culture, and this is why our culture is so divided.
Your argument is that Trump is good for those who want a dominant white European culture.
Mahdi Hassan will go on this program to debate 20 far-right conservatives and then act surprised when those he's talking to behave in racist, authoritarian, and fascistic manners, otherwise known as behave like they're members of the far right. And look, there's a lot I could say about this episode. Specifically a back and forth Hassan had with somebody who openly identified as a fascist. However, fundamentally my critique is, a prompt like this?
My next claim is that Donald Trump is defying the Constitution.
Among this sort of crowd is inherently going to lead to one of them responding like this.
So I would say that with Trump being anti-Constitution, I don't really care, to be quite frankly.
Okay.
Because in regards to the Constitution is a document that should seek to serve us.
Yes.
And when it fails to seek to serve us, that can be amended. Laws can be changed. And quite frankly, the fact is, we're defending things in this country that shouldn't be defended. Quite frankly, if Trump is anti-Constitution, good. And I think he should go further.
So you're saying you don't care about the Constitution, but actually you do, because you quite like the Second Amendment. You just don't like the bits that you disagree with. Can I just be clear on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm more than willing to amend it and include
whenever
the
it's in your
Second
favor.
Amendment. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So can Democrats do the same when they're in office?
No, absolutely not. Because
so you don't
it's the
believe in
friend enemy.
democracy?
No, I don't. Absolutely not.
What do you believe in?
Autocracy.
By who?
Honestly, quite frankly, anyone who is in line with Catholic teaching.
Donald Trump is not Catholic.
Of course, he's not. I completely agree, and that's part of the problem.
You don't support Trump?
No, I don't. I didn't even vote for him. I wrote in John Pork or someone.
Why
I can't
did
even
you
remember.
Americans United for the Separation of Church and State has an article going into this, but historically, Christian nationalists have sounded very much like, well, this guy, and opposed the Constitution on the basis of it being a secular document that does not back up religious social teachings. Not long after the Constitution was adopted, conservative ministers and others went on the warpath. The document, they griped, contained no references to God, Jesus Christ, or the Christian faith, and they were certain this would spark divine wrath. These attacks began shortly after ratification as copies of the Constitution were printed and people began reading it. In 1789, when President George Washington was touring New England, he received a message from a group of clergy in the area who told him we should not have been alone in rejoicing to have some explicit acknowledgement of the true only God and Jesus Christ, who he has sent, inserted somewhere in the Magna Carta of our country. In Boston, an anonymous writer tore into language at the end of Article 6 of the Constitution, which bans religious tests for public office. Its effect, he carped, was that, quote, all religion is expressly rejected from the Constitution, which led him to ask, was there ever any state or kingdom that could subsist without adopting some system of religion? A writer in a Virginia newspaper made a similar point, arguing that all governments, quote, have found it necessary to call in the aid of religion, while Presbyterian minister William Lynn posed this question about decoupling church and state. Would this not be a nation of atheists? You have to remember, at the time of the Constitution's creation, there wasn't really a left and a right yet. In fact, the very concepts wouldn't come about until the French Revolution. Because of that, you can find numerous ideas on both sides of the aisle which would be considered precursors to the modern far right. At least some subsection of the far right. Anti-Federalists, for example, were against the creation of the Constitution and instead preferred the American government to remain under the Articles of Confederation due to fear the Constitution gave the federal government too much power. One could easily see this as a precursor to certain right-wing movements which believe in the return of power to local community and the states over the federal government. Think everybody from sovereign citizens to secessionists to just your typical Ron Paul supporter. Meanwhile, those who opposed the Bill of Rights, those being Federalists, were very famously rather elitist in their understanding of politics, being open critics of the idea of rule of the people, and instead supporting something more openly aristocratic. Obviously, this is a defense of hierarchy, which is one of the most basic aspects of right-wing political theory. John Adams famously said, I do not say that democracy has been more pernicious on the whole and in the long run than monarchy or aristocracy. Democracy has never been and never can be so durable as aristocracy or monarchy, but while it lasts, it is more bloody than either. And it was Federalists who opposed a different aspect of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, which was essentially created as a compromise between Federalists and Anti-Federalists as a way to guarantee government would never infringe on particular liberties. Hassan went on Ali Velshi's MSNBC show after this conversation took place, by the way, to talk about how surprised he was by how openly racist they were. Do you know what the far right is? Like, definitionally? Genuinely, I was taken aback watching this, how many times I just could not believe the basics of the far right were reported as if they were some sort of breaking news that people were previously unaware about. Here are some examples.
Some of the contestants were openly racist toward Mehdi. One told Mehdi, an American citizen, to get the hell out of the country. Others, he found out, were a far cry from the Reagan-style conservatives that people talk about. At least one was an open fascist. Many were anti-democracy. Most were indifferent to the Constitution. For one debater, Connor identified as a fascist and said that former Spanish dictator Francisco Franco was a model leader.
What I didn't expect is kind of open racism of the kind we haven't seen for a long time, where people are telling me to my face to get out of the country. People are telling me that, you know, white people are Native Americans. People are telling me that I'm a fascist, as you just saw that guy Connor say. And look, this stuff is not as fringe as we once thought. I think the case is now closed for anyone who's still ludicrous to believe that. Remember the debate from 2016, Ali? What drove the Trump MAGA base? Was it economic insecurity or was it racial resentment? I think if you spend an hour and a half watching that Jubilee debate on YouTube, I think it's pretty clear what drives the core of the MAGA base. It is racial resentment. It is cultural resentment. It is the browning of America. When they say make America great again, they're very explicit that it means make America white again. It means going back to not just the 1950s, but the 1770s. On Gaza, here's something interesting and scary. I'm someone who, as you know, is very critical of Israel's behavior and war crimes in Gaza. And I'm critical of Israel because I support equal human dignity and I support the rights of any people to be free, including the Palestinians. These folks actually didn't want to debate me on Gaza. They actually said, we agree with you on Gaza. But why? Because they're anti-Semites, a lot of them. A lot of them don't like Israel because they're anti-Semitic. And we haven't talked very much in this country about the old school anti-Semitism being alive and well on the far right, including in the Trump base. We have a president who talks about Shylock bankers and has dinner with a Holocaust denier. This too is part of the new far right phenomenon, the old anti-Semitism.
Look, I'm not saying you shouldn't debate the far right. I am saying if you're going to debate anybody, you need to have a solid understanding of what their ideas are so you can figure out what claims would actually be worth discussing with them, if any. But hey, what do I know? I never authored a book called Win Every Argument, The Art of Debating, Persuading, and Public Speaking. Or how about the Michael Knowles one? You know, the one where this is one of the claims Knowles decides to debate?
My first claim is that there is no such thing as same-sex marriage.
Which eventually leads to this exchange, which I think sums up a completely different problem with this specific video, and with a couple of other videos, truth be told.
So,
right.
but why am I supposed to care that people have believed something for a long time?
Well, because often things that have endured forever everywhere do so because they work or they have some tethering to reality. But in this case,
in terms of reality, I'm glad you mentioned the word reality, because in terms of reality, I'm gay married. Ooh, right? Like we live in a society where, if you look at polling data, society seems to be okay with gay marriage. And so if you personally don't want to get gay married, you don't have to. But shouldn't we? I mean, I'm thinking, like, what is the point of this conversation?
Because you're not really married. You have a relationship with a man, but you're not really married.
I understand that you think that, and that's fine. But we should structure, because what's the point of this conversation?
Well, isn't that the million-dollar question? I mean, what is realistically going to happen here? Is anybody under the impression that Michael Knowles will convince that guy he's not in some sort of married relationship? Is anyone under the impression that this person will convince Michael Knowles that he is? Look, I understand the point of these sort of online debates is usually to convince the audience, and not specifically the person you're talking to. Okay. So do you think anyone in the audience who agrees with Knowles was convinced by that guy saying he's married? Do you think anyone in the audience who agreed with that guy was convinced by Knowles saying he wasn't? But now it's time for me to explain why I hate Surrounded so much, and why I've spent so much time criticizing it. You see, I was originally going to end this commentary with a bunch of fictional Surrounded episodes, like others have done. One video with exactly this joke had an example which just caused it all to click for me.
Hi, I'm one black man, and today I'm surrounded by 20 members of the KKK.
I had seen something like this before, and I immediately knew exactly where I saw it. So, for those who don't know, there was a point after Oprah Winfrey started taking off where basically anybody who was even mildly famous could get a daytime talk show. And this included beloved My Name is Earl character Ronaldo Rivera.
Hey Gerardo! You!
During one 1988 episode, Rivera invited both some skinheads and civil rights activist Roy Inez onto his program, and it resulted in a fight breaking out which injured several people, including the show's host. Now, obviously, Surrounded has not gone that far, at least at time of recording. However, it is a reminder of what this kind of entertainment can easily lead to when the entire point is essentially just creating as much chaos as possible. I'm also reminded of what Jon Stewart said during his famous appearance on Crossfire in 2004. For those who don't know, Crossfire was CNN's left-right debate show for over 20 years before that point. It had hosted a variety of people, including Pat Buchanan and Michael Kinsley. However, by the time Stewart was appearing on the show, its two correspondents were former Clinton strategist Paul Begala and a little-known Weekly Standard writer named Tucker Carlson. During that episode, Stewart tore the show apart, explaining in detail how, although it frames itself as a nuanced debate show, it is actually more focused on political theater than anything else.
And it's, the idea is...
If the indictment, let me get this straight. If the indictment is
If the indictment is, and I have seen you say this, that Crossfire reduces everything, as I said in the intro, to left, right, black, white.
Yes.
Well, it's because, see, we're a debate show. It's like saying the Weather Channel reduces
that'd be
everything
great.
to a storm front.
I would love to see a debate show.
In a 24-hour day where we have each side on as best we can get them.
That would be great.
And have them fight it out.
To do a debate would be great, but that's like saying pro wrestling is a show about athletic competition.
Sorry. I think you're a good comedian. I think your lectures are boring. Let me ask you a question on the news.
Now, this is theater. I mean, it's obvious. This, you're doing theater when you should be doing debate, which would be great.
No, it's
not honest. What you do is not honest. What you do is partisan hackery. And I'll tell you why I know
John Kerry
it.
on your show, and you sniff his throne, and you're accusing us of partisan hackery?
Absolutely.
You've got to be kidding, man.
You're on CNN.
Say,
the show that leads into me is puppets making crank phone calls. What is wrong with you? Well, the interesting thing that I have is you have a responsibility to the public discourse. And you fail
need to get a job at a journalism
miserably.
School, I think.
You need to go to one. The thing that I want to say is, when you have people on for just knee-jerk, reactionary talk...
Wait, I thought you were going to be funny. Come on, be funny.
No, I'm not going to be your monkey. Go ahead. I watch your show every day, and it kills me.
I can tell you love it.
It's so painful to watch. You know, because we need what you do. This is such a great opportunity you have here to actually get politicians off of their marketing and strategy. Yeah, it's someone who watches your show and cannot take it anymore. I just can't.
What's it like to have dinner with you? It must be excruciating. Do you lecture people like this? Or do you come over to their house and sit and lecture them and, they're not doing the right thing, that they're missing their opportunities, evading their responsibilities?
If I think they are.
Look, I wouldn't want to eat with you, man. That's horrible.
I know, and you won't.
That is what Surrounded is. It pretends to actually be a show interested in debate, when in actuality it cares about nothing more than theater. It wants to create chaos. That's why every single problem I have discussed in this video exists, because it leads to more arguments and therefore more chaos. I would actually enjoy a series where people from all across the political spectrum sit down with each other and talk about important issues. And I even think there's room for people who hold ideologies that I think are abhorrent but have unfortunately made their way into the mainstream to be on such a program. But that's not what we see here, and that is genuinely the most frustrating part of all of this. And because of that, I am going to end this commentary with Jon Stewart making a plea to those on Crossfire that I am also making to the people behind Surrounded.
In many ways, it's funny, and I made a special effort to come on the show today because I have privately, amongst my friends, and also in occasional newspapers and television shows, mentioned this show as being bad. And I felt that wasn't fair, and I should come here and tell you that it's not so much that it's bad as it's hurting America. So I wanted to come here today and say, here's just what I wanted to tell you guys.
Yeah.
Stop. Stop hurting America.
Good night and good luck.